So this is a video all about landscapes and materials in Unreal 5. There's only just some really important things, and that's why I'm making this video, so that you know you can go from the beginning to the end. The only thing that will take time is designing everything. So painting, adding foliage. So in this video, what we'll go through is we'll go through creating the landscape object, making a very simple shader, and then making a complicated shader, which actually makes it look good. And then I'll give you some ideas about painting it. So let's dive right in. All right, so let's load up Unreal version 5. And here we are. So we have our scene. So first, I'm going to change the editor so that it works just like Maya. You need to do is go into your editor preferences and let's see, go search for mouse. So I type in mouse and then invert middle mouse look pan and turn that on. Press the X with the mouse, set as default, yes, it's writable, and all that kind of jazz. All right, so now it should behave correctly. So here is the world, the default world in Unreal 5. We're going to start by making a landscape, and it will bring up this gigantic landscape. So we just want something that's rather small, just for demonstration purposes. And we're going to do section size set to 15 by 15, and I think that's good enough for our purpose. And then we'll click on create, and it's going to make it, set it up. All right, there is our object. So if we look in our outliner, we can see here our landscape is right over here. We click on that, press W. We have to actually go back to our selection mode. Click on the landscape, press W, and we should be able to move it around. There we go. And I'm going to click on this this part of the arrow, and I'm going to move it right to about over here. And then I'll delete this wall. Click on our landscape again and move it so that we can just walk right off of the main area and go into the landscape. Okay. You'll also notice that we have a bunch of these little guys. These are different areas of the landscape. That's what these guys are doing there. Then we have our details for the landscape, and this is going to be vital for us to work with. If you scroll down, where is it? General? No. Vector, rendering, all. Landscape material. That's right there. So let's start working on this. What we'll do is, and in Unreal 5, you can bring up the content drawer down here so that it isn't always taking up real estate on the screen. So it's kind of good to get used to that, to bring it up and let it go away. We'll start with by creating the landscape object. So I go over here, and hold on one second. Okay. So here is our object. Let's start by making a material. So we load up the content drawer, and we need to make a folder. So we'll make a new folder, and we'll call this landscape. And double click on landscape in there. And then we'll right click in here, and we'll select material, and we'll call this M_land landscape. And then we will open that up. And here is our material. So I double clicked on the material I just created, and I have this. This is where we're going to be putting all of our our shader information. We'll have textures and layers and coordinates, and it's just going to be crazy. Actually, it's simple. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to get a single texture. So the landscape materials are in your content section, and it should be a zip file that says landscape materials. There's also a link in the comments or the content description rather of this video to a Google Drive zip file, and it should have all these guys inside of it. So we'll just do some grass as a demonstration first, and this is we have some albedo, we have ambient occlusion, displacement, normal map, roughness, and specular. Just for this, we're going to use albedo. So for this, I'm going to bring up our content drawer, and then I'm going to drag in the albedo right next to it, just like so. And with that dragged in, I'll drag it in then into the shader, and then we get this little texture sample. Then I'm going to take an RGB out and put it into the base color, and we have a very, very simple texture bulb. We apply it, we save it, we close it, and now we're going to apply it onto the landscape. And here is our material. We need to select the landscape first. All right, open up the content drawer, and you need to be able to actually see it over the content drawer. There we go. And I click and hold, and I move it onto this little slot there. So here you can see this is very, very simple. There's a lot of problems with this. One is it tiles way too much. Also, it has some specularity here that's really annoying, making it look just like a painted van from the 70s. What we can do that's really neat about Unreal is that we can make it so we can paint the ground. That we can paint the ground, and we can get a really, really nice shader to it. Before we do any of that, let me show you how you can sculpt a little bit of the landscape. So we go into landscape mode over here. Landscape mode, we go into sculpt. We're set up to sculpt already. And if we hover over the ground, you can see we have a gigantic brush. And if we click and hold, you can see it's pulling it up there really high. We can undo that. Let's bring down the tool strength low. Let's bring down the brush size so it's a little bit smaller. So you can see if we go like this, we can bring it up. We can make little mountains. And they don't look terribly realistic. It takes a little bit of time to do that. I'll go over that at the end of this video. And then if we want to make it go down, we hold down Shift and we can move the mountains down. If I hold Shift, however, it's also going to bring the terrain inside, or it's going to go underneath the, just like the sea level. We can click on Flatten, and you, in order to flatten something, you click and hold on regular like sea level, and then you can move it around and it will flatten it to that particular level and get back to 0. All right, let's make a more complicated shader. So this is fun. All right, so we're going to go to our content drawer. We're going to double click on the landscape. And now we're going to add a few things. First, we need to add a layer blend. So this is our more complicated one. We're going to get to this one in a second. We're going to need a layer blend, and then we're going to need a landscape layer coordinates. All right, so let's get to this. So we right click, and then we type in layer blend. landscape layer blend, and then right click, and we type in landscape layer coordinates. All right. We're going to disconnect this one by holding Alt and clicking on the line. And now we start adding elements to this. So we add little elements in the details over here. You see 0 array elements. I'm going to click 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now we have 4 array elements, and our first one is going to be called rock. Now you can see over here we have 4 elements, and then I can close that up. I can open this up, and then I'm going to call this dirt. And close that up, bring this one out, and then I'll call this one moss, and close that up, open this one up, and I'm going to call this one grass. It can go in any order, doesn't really matter, but that one just makes a lot of sense to me. Then I take the output of this and I put it into base color. And this one is grass over here, so I'm going to take this out one, the output there, put it into layer grass. Then we also need some more of these textures. So here I'm going to grab from our pre-made textures. This one, this is moss. I'm going to bring this one in. And I'll go up. And then I'll get this one. This is dirt. I'm just grabbing in the albedo for all these guys. And then this is rock. I'm going to bring that in. All right, now we just need to add, this one's grass already, so we need this one, this one, this one, and drag this guy in, these guys in. So there's rock. Take the output of that into rock. And this is moss. Take the output of this and put it into layer moss, and take out dirt and put it into dirt. All right, so we are not completed yet because we need to give it some layer coordinates, landscape layer coordinates for the UVs. So we click on our layer coordinates that we made, and we take the output and we put it into the UVs of all of our little textures, and plug that in there. Now we also are going to have some tiling issues with this. So what I like to do here, and I'll give you an example of what it looks like. Apply and save. Oh wait, no, we have to do something else before we do that. Let's go ahead and change the mapping scale to 3.5. If we don't do that, it's going to tile a lot. It's going to look a little weird. Apply, save. All right, so the next thing is that we need to set up the data for how this is going to be stored. You can see it all turn black. It's okay, that's what it's supposed to do. So now we click on paint, and we'll see all of our layers are now over here. We don't have any data or layer info, as it's more accurately put, in the scene yet. So I click on this little plus sign, and I click on weight blended layer, and now we need to put find a location for it. So I'm going to put it right in landscape, and here's the name. Make sure there's no spaces, doesn't like that. Save, and now we have some textures. That's our first texture. Let's put that down. Weight blended layer. We'll go to landscape and press OK, and we'll do it for moss. Click on landscape, hide that. Click on grass, weight blended layer, click on landscape, and save. Now you'll see that we have over here all of the layer info right there and the landscape. When we put in all the other textures, it's going to be a good idea to make individual folders for these guys, because otherwise it's going to be a little bit messy. So we have our, we finally have our textures. The only thing is that it still has this really ugly looking texture that looks like it's painted on the side of a 70s van. So if we want to paint something on here now, we can just go ahead and just start painting. And you can see we have a gigantic brush. Let's move that brush down. You can paint all these guys. Now, when you're painting the your landscape, don't make it quite so obvious what each of these textures are. This is, of course, subjective, but I think that if you are painting this, you're going to want to do a mixture of all these guys. So that means that you want to bring your tool strength down. And then let's bring our brush down a little. And we'll mix these guys together. So we can mix a little bit of dirt with some of the moss. And this way, what you do is you create a really nice transition between all these guys. And you don't have to worry a whole lot about as much tiling. And I'm just going over here and clicking once. And I have some moss, and I'm going to put that inside of the grass. You'll see how this works when we actually get a bit of a landscape going. It'll start to make a little bit more sense. So here you can see that we have just a mixture of these guys. Doesn't look too terribly good because we have that horrible specularity on it. So now that we have that simple material going right here, let's actually make the final material. And the final material looks like this. So what's really neat in this is that we have also landscape visibility mask, and this will enable us to put holes in the landscape. And I'll also show you how to make it a little bit more pretty so that you don't have all these wires going all over the place. And these little guys around here are the our comments. So let's hide that guy up. All right. So now what we need to do is we need to set up all of our textures. So I'm going to move this up a little. I'm going to make the thumbnail size small so we can see a little bit more. And I'll right click here and I'll add a folder. And this is going to be grass. Right click, add another folder. This is going to be dirt. Right click, another folder, and rock. Right click, another folder, and we're going to call this moss. All right. So let's move our stuff. So we're going to click and hold on dirt, and we're going to move it here and move it. And we're going to move the grass layer into grass, move. We're going to move the rock layer into rock, move. We're going to move the moss layer into moss. And let's double check to see that that didn't really break anything quite so much. I think it should still, yeah, it's still able to draw fine. All right, so we have that going. And this is our rock. So we're going to take our rock texture and move it in there. We're going to take our grass texture. We're going to move it in there. We're going to take our moss texture and move it in there. And take our dirt texture and move it in there. So now things are really nicely organized. So very important to organize things well. It'll save you a lot of headache in the future. All right, now we're going to take the textures that we need, and we're going to plug them into our scene. So let's look at rock first, because rock has a little bit of an unusual thing in it. I changed in this texture, and you'll see it in the zip file. I added roughness shiny test, and I think I put that one in there as specularity. So sorry, that's a little confusing. Let's bring in the ambient occlusion, the normal map, and the shiny test, and the roughness. There's nothing in specularity, so let's leave that there. We already have the albedo, and we don't need displacement, because that will dramatically increase the tessellation of the object of landscape. So why did you not go in there? There we go. Okay. Okay. Good. All right, we have that. Now we're going to add our moss textures. So we go up, and let's find moss. That's dirt. And is that grass? I think that's grass. No, I think that was actually moss. Yeah. Yep. This is grass here. So let's go to ground forest. That's moss. We get the AO. We get the normal, roughness, and specular. I don't think we need this, but let's bring it in just for the hell of it. Maybe we might find a need for it. All right. So we have that guy. And that was transmission. And then we go to landscape. We did moss. We did rock. Let's see, we did it. Moss. Now we need grass. And grab this. AO, normal, roughness, and specular. Move that up there. And then we go to landscape again. And then we're going to do dirt. And go up. And there we are. AO, normal, roughness, specular. So you can get these textures off of Quixel or Fab as it's called now. And you can make your own. The only reason I put these guys in here is that I just want to make it as easy to set this up as possible. Now let's get our material. So here's our material. Bring this down over here so that I can drag everything in. It's going to look a little bit messy when we start, but that's all right. We bring in our content drawer. And then we go to rock. We already have most of the rock. Let's drag rock over here. And then we're going to go to moss. And then we'll drag moss and put it over here. And then we'll go to grass. And we're going to drag these guys over here. And then what do we have left? Dirt. Put them over here. Okay, and we can make that larger. So now we have all the sets. Let's put them, organize them a little bit more. And this should be our dirt, right? Yeah, dirt. Okay, and there's dirt there. I'm going to disconnect dirt. I'm going to put it together over there. All right, and then we have our landscape coordinates. I'm going to disconnect these guys, and I'm just holding down Alt and clicking on it. And I'm going to slow this or speed this up while we're going through this process. Okay, so now we have all of these guys all in a small little section. So each of them is organized a lot better. What we can now do is we can select all of these guys just for one particular texture, and we can press C. When we press C, that will comment it. And so this one is dirt, and we can type in what it is. The neat thing about having the comment is that when we move this, we move all of the pieces that are inside of it. So it's really handy. Select this guy. This should be, this is grass. Make sure all of it is grass. There we go. Select this, press C, grass. This should be moss. Select all of that, C for moss. And then select this over here. And this is rock. Press C. Okay. Move these guys up. And let's make sure all these guys are correct. Moss. 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 and moss. Okay, all right. So now we have that. Now what we need to do is, this is our main material. We're going to change this to a material attribute, and it will make it really tiny. So what it now needs is, oh, I forgot I have to add that stuff in there. What it now needs is, it needs a material attribute in each one of these guys, because we no longer have a place to plug in our ambient occlusion, etc., etc. Right click, make material. There we are. So I typed in make mater. So each one of these guys is going to get their own. And if I zoom in, you can see we have base color, metallic, specular, etc., etc. That's for each one of these guys. I can press Control C, Control V, and I can put one next to each of these guys. And then all we need to do is just get our comment section to accommodate. Now the one other thing that we need for this is, we need the little guy that will help create a hole in the material, in the landscape. And let's look at that guy. And that is landscape visibility mask. So right click and we type in landscape. You look for visibility mask, and we have that. All right. So now it's time to plug these guys in. So we're going to take the output of this landscape layer blend, and we're going to put it right into that material. I'm going to close this because we don't need to worry about those errors. And let's make sure that we have all these guys plugged into the correct spot. This is grass, so it's going to be plugged in here. And this is moss, it's going to be plugged in there. This is rock, it's going to be plugged in on the first one. And this is dirt, and that'll be in on the second one. And we have all those guys plugged in. Now, the next thing we need to do is, we need to plug in each one of our materials. So we need to make sure that we have the correct ones plugged in. Because if we don't, it's going to look a little weird. So this is always normal. You can tell what the normal looks like. I'll plug in the normal over there. And this one here, click on it. We can look down here and we can see it's ambient occlusion. And our ambient occlusion is down there. So I'm just going to plug that in there. Click on this guy. This is our specular. I take the output of that, put it in specular. And this one is roughness. Take the output, put it in roughness. And we can't forget the diffuse or albedo. I put in there. So that's plugged in. And now I'm going to go and do that for the rest of these guys and speed through it. Okay, so the last one that was unusual is in rock and has shiny test. That one it's not going into roughness, it's going into specular. Okay, so everything's plugged in. Also, I have the transmission with moss, and I'm not going to plug that in, but I just had that there just as a test to see how it worked. The next thing we'll do after that is we need to plug in our landscape visibility mask, and that goes into opacity mask. Okay, so we're gonna grab these guys, plug it into the opacity mask of each one. And you also don't have to have 4 layers. You can have as many layers as you want, but just remember that it's going to take memory. And we'll plug it in over here, opacity mask. Cool. All right. Okay, but we are not set. We still have to plug in our UVs. So this is going to be fun. We now have to plug in UVs into each one of these texture samples. So there's a nifty little trick that you can do. So I take the output of that UV and I plug it into that one. You can also double click right here on the line and you'll get an extra little dot. And now I can take that dot and I can plug it into all the other ones. So that's handy. And I'll take this output and put it into this guy here. Double click on this line and put it into these guys. And I'll speed through this as well. All right. Okay, so now we have set this whole thing up. So it looks like a lot of noodly stuff, but that looks cool. Reminds me of Moog synthesizers. All right, so now we click apply and we click save. Now what we should be seeing is we should be seeing a lot more really, really neat detail on the ground. So let's see here. We have that applied. Let's do some sculpting. That's set to flatten. And let's move the brush size, make it smaller. And if we walk around, we should also see some cool stuff. Looks a lot more real. And we no longer have that annoying painted on the side of a van. Now you can see that the dirt right there has little elements of it that are protruding forth, like the rocks and sticks and grass. We go over into the grass area, and that also looks pretty cool. And the moss is starting to look really good. Alright, so yeah, we have it all plugged in properly. And so now the last little bit is to talk about how to make a mountainous area actually look realistic. So this can be this is up to your own artistic desire. You really should have some reference. I like to use reference quite a lot. And just to give you an idea of what you should make. There's certain ways that landscape works. Like when you go into higher altitudes, you see a lot more rock, and you see a lot less grass and moss. And so you'll have rock on the top, you'll have some grass at lower altitudes. Sometimes moss will be up when you get closer to the top of a mountain. But the other thing too that's really important is that you can't just paint the ground and expect it to look right. So we have over here some different kinds of grass. Over here we have some kind of like hay. And you can also make multiple different kinds of rocks that can also help in the realism. There's also plugins that will change the texture depending on the altitude that you have set up. That can be a little cheap looking, but you know, it's really fast. Not quite fast to actually plug it in though, however. You can also take a height map off of let's see. You can also take height maps, and this can be anywhere. You could take, let's see. You could take a height map from, oh, I don't know. Is this Australia? Then you can take it from Hawaii. You can have just mountainous height maps that end up looking like this. And you know, it's not as easy as it seems to say, like, oh, take a height map and you don't have to paint anything. No, there's still a lot of fixing up that you have to do. You also have to change when you put a height map in how much it's affecting the terrain. So, you know, it can be, and you might have to change it in Photoshop to change your height map. So we then can, if we're going to paint up, we're going to need to make it a little bit more interesting. So sculpting, let's bring it up. You also might notice that when we go further away, that the mountain starts to get less complicated. This is due to level of detail. You can fix this up a little bit. If I go to selection mode and I look in our outliner, make sure that our landscape is selected. Click on our landscape and we go to LOD. There we go. Look at LOD. Ah, there we go. Max LOD level. So I clicked on this guy, I got max LOD level. If I change that to a 0, now it's going to be constantly at the highest resolution. Now, that's not something that you're going to want to do in general, because it's going to be thinking a lot about drawing that. So this is often good if you just have a small scene, or you just want to see what you're working on. All right, so I have a really simple ground here. I'm just going to add just a tiny bit more to give it a little tiny bit more realism. Bring this guy up here. And this is just a small little hill that you might run over. And there we are. And I'll flatten the top of it just a little bit. So click on flatten. Make sure the brush size is a little smaller. You can also use the... No, it doesn't like that. I did it one time. Whoa. That's very flattened. Probably too much. And it also had really high tool strength. So the other thing that we can do is we can add some erosion. And erosion, if we click on it, where is this guy? There it is. This will help to... Everything is... The tools are so... It's like a sledgehammer. There. Now, it's starting to look a little bit more realistic if you don't look at the texture. This will simulate a long amount of time and how it might erode the ground. There's also hydro, which will simulate a lot of flooding and how that might change the topology. So if we were to paint this by hand, assuming that all of this out here, it's okay how it's looking, let's go start painting around. So let's get some ground around it. So on top of the mountain, we're probably going to have some rock. And then coming down off the mountain, we can still have a little bit more rock. So I keep the rock going, and I'm just painting just tiny bits. Probably want to change the brush size a little bit. And we might want to have some dirt in kind of some of the crevices of this mountain. So we can switch to dirt. Make the brush size a little smaller. And then we can add some moss here and there. Just to mix together with all of it. And then we'll also add some moss down at the base so that we don't get so much tiling. So the moss can help in eliminating that tiling. Also add a tiny bit of moss at the top. So it looks a lot more realistic now, and of course, what you really need is you need a lot of you need some foliage, you need some rocks, you need some other things that are just going to give it that real look. All right, so let's go over here and see what it looks like. Looks a lot more realistic. Looks even more realistic if you can go up. All right. So there you are. There is the general how-to. One thing that you might also notice with the landscape is that you might notice I have 128 gigs on my computer for RAM, so that's a lot of RAM. Other computers might not have quite as much, so when you're looking at your scene, some of the textures might not show up. If that's the case, and you also have to think about other people's machines when they're looking at your video game or your level. To fix this, if it's not showing up, you have to tell Unreal where it's getting the texture, how it's pulling the texture into memory. So sampler source from texture asset, we can change that to shared wrap, and that will help so that it will pull it in a different way, and you will always be able to see your textures. So I'm just selecting all of these guys, and then I'm changing to shared wrap. And then I click apply and save. And lastly, we haven't tried out the hole. So let's make a hole in the ground. This is pretty cool. We go to sculpt, we go to visibility, and let's make the brush size smaller. And we make a hole, and there, look at that, we have a hole in the ground. You can also then sculpt it after that, and you could hold down shift and make it go further down into the ground. Then you can add some geometry to have like a cave or something. You could also even have a separate well, that's kind of funny, you could see the invisible terrain underneath it like that. That's cool. Then you could even have a second terrain that goes underneath it if you have like a little hallway system or something. In order to bring that back, you hold down shift when you have visibility checked, and it will bring it right on back. So there you have it. I hope that was informative. Everything else that you'll do, making things more complicated, will just build upon this. This is the base understanding of how to use layers in your level with Unreal. Have a fantastic day, and thank you for watching.